So we live in a post-Islam Makhachev world now. Islam is the GOAT. He's the greatest fighter of all time. I think, look, if John Jones had beaten either Francis Ngannou or Tom Aspinall, I may be more inclined to give him that status, but Islam is the greatest fighter of all time. But he's still fighting, which is so great, because he could just ride off into the sunset right now and be the greatest, and that's it. But no, he wants to keep fighting, and that is so awesome, because there are a lot of interesting fights for him at welterweight right now. Of course, listen, we kind of have to talk about Ilia Topuria, because that's the fight that prior to this fight happening, everybody wanted that. People were actually upset that JDM beat Bilal because we were now missing out on Ilia versus Islam. So, is Ilia going to go up to welterweight to fight Islam? I mean, maybe. I just kind of think that's a bad idea for Ilia. I think that Ilia is not a very big 55er. Ilia, said himself he didn't put on any weight to get up to 55. He's just cutting less. And obviously, right, I don't think he's extremely undersized for the weight class or anything like that. But obviously, Charles Oliveira is a very strong lightweight. We saw that in the fight against Gamrot. And he did seem stronger than Ilia. Unfortunately, being a lot physically stronger has nothing to do with overextending on a right hand out in space and getting cracked right on the chin. But to get up to 170, I feel like Ilia would have to get fat. I don't think his frame is big enough at 5'6.5" with a 69-inch reach to adequately put on size at that weight class. But I mean, who knows, right? Ilia might just not cut any weight really and fight at 170. I mean, skill for skill, he's always going to be dangerous. I think the one thing for him in this matchup is that Islam sometimes has a propensity to kind of back straight up to the fence because he's super evasive. And if you back up to the fence, your odds of getting knocked out by Ilia fly through the roof. Now, though, here's sort of another problem for Ilia. His game is very linear. It's very deadly, but it's very linear, like we've talked about in the past. Ilia Topuria has never, ever thrown a kick above the waist in his entire UFC career. He's never thrown a body kick. He's never thrown a head kick. His entire game consists of, at least when it comes to striking, boxing and leg kicks. Well, Islam is a southpaw. Ilia is not. There will not be a low outside calf kick, which is one of the biggest aspects of his game, unfortunately. So that's already kind of out. Man, if I'm Islam, I'm just going to do what Khabib did against Conor. Circle, shoot halfway across the octagon, try to get a hold of him. And look, if Islam is going to be way stronger than Ilia, which I would imagine he's going to be, he doesn't need to necessarily get that deep on takedowns. I mean, listen, if Ilia hits a perfect down block like he was doing against Bryce Mitchell, well, that's perfect because the down block just prevents you from grabbing them at all. But if Islam gets a hold of one of Ilia's legs, he's gonna hike it up and trip him just like he did to Jack. I mean, it's so hard to prevent that if you're not strong enough to really sprawl after they get their arms locked. I mean, it didn't matter how good of a wrestler Kamaru Usman was here. When Hamzat got a hold of his leg and hiked it way up into the air, there was just nothing you can do. And again, not to mention the added size for Islam is going to make his chin and his durability better, right? The bigger you are, the more mass you have, the more durable you're gonna be. It doesn't matter if you give Ilia a shot like this where he can make you run into a punch right on the chin, but Islam's not gonna do that. He's so risk-adverse on the feet. I just think there's so many roadblocks here for poor Ilia. Down at 55, I think it's a very interesting fight. I just don't know how interesting it is up at 170. Especially when you got a lot of guys at welterweight who are fucking massive for the weight class. Speaking of, right, Michael Morales. Michael Morales, dude, 12 hours after weighing in at 170, he was 200 pounds. 12 hours after. This guy is huge. I frankly don't know how he makes the weight. Listen, Sean Brady, we know on fight night against Leon Edwards was 200 pounds, and he looked tiny compared to Morales. Morales is massive. He's going to be a lot bigger than Islam. According to Javier Mendez, Islam was 185 on fight night. Look, that's definitely not small for the weight class, but it's not that big either. Look, Jack Della Maddalena, the one thing you could give Islam going into the fight against him was that, well, Jack's frame isn't that big. I mean, Jack, again, not a small welterweight, it's not what I'm saying, but his frame's not that big. His frame is kind of similar to most 55ers. In fact, despite being listed at 5'11", he didn't look any taller than Islam at all. But, dude, like Michael Morales, I mean, here's him next to the 6'3" Neil Magny. He is going to be huge. And the one thing I like about his striking game, obviously, right, he has a tremendous amount of power, but for the most part, he manages distance really well. He stays at range with the jab. I mean, look right here how he makes Brady run into the jab, lands the right hand behind it, and then really hurts him right here, all just using his range so well. Or right here, this 1-2 at space. I mean, it's so perfect for how tall and long and how much power he has. For the most part, with the amount of power he has, I love the way he manages distance. But there's a reason why I said for the most part, he manages space pretty well, because he also sometimes just blitzes at you, and he actually runs into takedowns sometimes because of this. I mean, right here, he explodes off of the cage, runs right into the takedown, and look at how deep he ran into this shot, yet he was still able to defend. I mean, this is just pure athleticism. And it happened again, right? He runs right into the takedown, still defends for a while. Eventually, his opponent does get his hands locked, completes the takedown, but then he just pops immediately all the way back up. It's just all strength and athleticism right here. Now, obviously, against Islam Makhachev, exactly how is that going to look, like an exact sequence like this, just with Islam there instead? I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I can say pretty confidently that Islam is a lot more technical than Michael Morales is going to be in the grappling. But that exact strength differential between, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. But I think that Michael Morales needs to avoid sequences like this really, really badly. I'm telling Islam, you're going to wait for an opportunity like this. You're ducking right underneath it, and you're making him run into the double leg. Now, if Islam gets Michael Morales completely flat on his back, that is, I don't think Morales is going to be able to get back up. Up against a fence like this, I'm not 100% sure. But if you're out in the open flat on your back, there's just no shot. There's no shot. Islam's top pressure is way too good. His submission threat is way too good. Islam is going to be way more technical. And if you do try to get up from there, it's going to have to be a slower kind of systematic build-up. And then you're severely running the risk of running into submissions, back takes. Again, we know for sure Islam is going to be way more technical than Michael Morales in the grappling. It's just whether or not he's going to give Islam the opportunity with sequences like this. If I was working with Michael Morales, I'm telling him we are holding the center and we are just popping the jab at range. And Islam needs to close the distance. If Islam is shooting on us, it's not because we ran into the takedown. We're ready for it. We're going to get the underhooks. We're going to sprawl on it hard. He needs to close the distance, and we're going to make him run into punches over the top. That's what we're doing. We're not pressuring at all other than holding the center. And I think that is probably our best bet of winning. Again, right, going into the Jack fight, the one thing that I was saying going into it was, well, I'm excited to have to see Islam now have to close the distance against, again, a taller, longer guy, because against Renato Moicano in those brief moments, it did look like Islam kind of struggled with the height differential. But obviously Jack's listed height, I don't think he's taller or even the same height as Renato Moicano. He's not. So we didn't really get to see it. But Michael Morales, again, made a 200-pound Sean Brady look tiny. So I think that is, frankly, a very, very interesting fight. Now, I think a sort of less interesting fight is Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates, again, look, on the feet is, I would say, more technical than Michael Morales, probably just as tall and long. He's not nearly as big, and I think the grappling, it's going to be hard for him here. I think Carlos is a very good grappler. I think the takedown defense for the most part against Ian Gary looked good. I think for the most part it looked good against Leon Edwards, but right as he threw a leg kick here, Leon got in on the double leg, took him down, which, reminds me a lot of how Islam took down Dan Hooker. Prates had to turtle, gave up his back, and, he did a good job posturing up, standing up here, which made Leon get rid of the body triangle, but then he hits the ground, hits the trip immediately, then fully secures the back take here. I think Islam can 100% replicate this, especially the trips and the clinch game from him. Obviously, Prates is so dangerous on the feet, but again, can repeat this all day. The one thing we know about Islam, he's going to do anything and everything in his power to stay safe on the feet from Prates. And I think, out of all of these massive welterweights that are out there, again, Prates, he has the frame of a real welterweight, but size-wise, I think Islam obviously so much more technical in the grappling. I think there's not going to be a big strength advantage, and I think that Islam will get in on the shot, and I think that he can continuously take Prates' back, because Prates is going to have to turtle to try to stand back up. So I think that's probably one of the more least interesting fights for him. Now, of course, there are a few names here, like Shavkat Rakhmonov. That might be Islam's nightmare matchup at 170. Shavkat, again, he's listed at 6'1". Looked the exact same height as Ian Gary, who's listed at 6'3". Really good grappler, comes from a Sambo background. His entire takedown game is like upper body clinch takedowns. Now, I don't think he can take down Islam in the clinch. I don't think he can. I don't know if Islam can take him down either. Obviously, Shavkat has shot one clean double leg ever. He hit it very nicely, but I think he needs more of this. Listen, when Shavkat actually gets you on the ground, his top pressure, his submission threat, it's very, very good. But because he only relies on clinch takedowns, he has a really difficult time hitting them. Again, it's essentially Greco-Roman wrestling if you're doing Sambo takedowns without the gi jacket on. And it's just really hard to hit these consistently. And obviously, Islam is a specialist in the clinch. He's so good from that positioning. The one way I can see Shavkat reliably taking him down is sometimes when you pressure Islam up against the fence, he has a tendency to stand really narrow because he likes to set up throws. And, from this position right here, that's how Thiago Moises just got his hands locked really easily and took him down. I would say you're definitely not going to do this against Shavkat, but who knows? That's probably the one way I can see him getting taken down reliably. On the feet, he outboxed Ian Gary, who, again, so tall and so long. He's ridiculously durable. He is very dangerous on the feet. Shavkat has a ton of power. Obviously, the Joff Neal fight, he hurt Joff in the boxing, then finished him on the feet with a rear naked choke. He's ripping fucking spinning wheel kicks, like good spinning wheel kicks. Again, I don't talk about it a lot. I was a Taekwondo prodigy in my youth. I know a good spinning wheel kick when I see one. Again, though, the thing about that matchup is that Shavkat was in for a title shot. I don't believe he is anymore after being out for as long as he was. He needs another fight. So I don't know if he's super worth talking about. Obviously Ian Gary, maybe he's got to get through Bilal Muhammad though. But Kamaru Usman, didn't even really think about him much prior, but, he says he wants to fight for the title. Islam says he wants to fight Usman next, and that makes a lot of sense to me, because Kamaru Usman might honestly be an easy fight for Islam, as crazy as that might sound. But, as you guys have known, I always felt really bad for Kamaru Usman, because, look, there are, reasons why he lost the Leon Edwards fight just stylistically, which we'll talk about with this matchup against Islam, hypothetically, but I felt so bad for him because he moves up to fight fucking Khamzat Chimaev on a week's notice. Survives round one, arguably wins the second two rounds, performs really well based on the circumstances, and everybody just called him washed after. It was just so funny. Right after that fight, everybody was just like, oh, well, he's washed. Yeah, well, Kamaru Usman's not. His knees, though, man. He's not the same because of his knees. I mean, we've been hearing about how bad his knees had been for like 10 years at that point. We had never seen him washed prior to that fight. After that, I mean, we'd never seen it yet. Everybody was just like, oh, he's washed. But then he comes out in the Joaquin Buckley fight and looked absolutely phenomenal. Like, he's shooting double legs. His cardio looked really, really good. So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. He is getting a bit up there in age. I just don't think we've ever seen him have a performance where he was clearly not the same. So, I think it is a somewhat interesting fight against Islam, though. Again, stylistically, Islam should have a lot of advantages here. Kamaru Usman is going to be hard to take down. I think Usman's takedown defense is phenomenal, especially off singles and double legs. I think potentially in the clinch might be a good way for Islam to go for takedowns, but it's not going to be a walk in the park, especially because Usman's jab is really, really good. But, for how good his straight shots are, I would say every other aspect of boxing, he is not very great at all. His winging shots are awful. They are terrible. When he throws hooks, they are absolutely abysmal. And his defense as well, really, really not great. He's very susceptible to overhands and hooks and uppercuts. He doesn't use a ton of head movement. Buckley was landing a few of these on him round 5, but even when, to most people he was in his prime, Gilbert Burns was cracking him with these kind of shots all day long. Though, of course, right, Islam's not really known for a tremendous amount of power. So, boxing for boxing, Usman's power jab, especially with the 76-inch reach, apparently 6 feet tall. I'm honestly, ever since the Jack fight, a little skeptical of going off of these listings, but it's interesting. Now, I think for Islam, though, the huge advantage he's going to have is obviously he showed to have a really, really high-level kicking game against JDM. It wasn't super fancy. It wasn't, any Edson Barbosa spinning back kicks or anything like that, but he was able to use his kicks perfectly to shut down Jack's game. Now, what did Usman struggle with so much against Leon? Well, Leon's a southpaw. Leon was just ripping kicks. Because he's a southpaw, he's got that kick to the body, the inside leg kick, the head kick, and he was just spamming those kicks the entire time. And obviously, Islam's not as fast as Leon is, but I think that is going to be the blueprint for him. Stay safe on the feet, keep moving, throw body kicks, head kicks, leg kicks. Because Usman has such a boxing-heavy style, staying on the outside, just spamming kicks is a very, very good idea. And obviously, when you just compare their grappling, Kamaru Usman is through and through just a pure wrestler. He does not have the all-around grappling game that Islam does. Islam has potentially, no, you know what? I think he's the best all-around grappler in the UFC, period. When it comes to wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu all together, he's the absolute best. And, we saw what happened when Leon Edwards kind of caught Usman off guard with this trip right here, took him down, chair sit to take his back with the body triangle. And I think Islam can definitely replicate this. Now, I think taking Islam down is going to be hard for Usman, but that's a big part of his game. Obviously, Usman's takedowns against Buckley looked really, really good. Though, because Usman has no back take threat, because he has very little submission threat, turtling and standing back up against him should be very doable. That's kind of what Leon Edwards did and just kept standing up. Now, obviously, I said this going into the Buckley fight, and I realized how bad Buckley is when it comes to the fundamentals. He didn't have this ability at all. I believe that Islam absolutely does. Again, you have to turtle, fight the hand, stand back up. He's not going to take your back. He cannot submit you. But Islam, he loves to set up throws when he's getting pushed up against the fence. And because of that, he stands very narrow against the fence. And guys like Thiago Moises has been able to get his hands locked for this exact reason. I mean, theoretically, potentially somebody like Usman can replicate this. But again, I can see Islam standing back up without a problem. I think it's somewhat interesting, but I think that's probably one of the most winnable fights for Islam is against Usman.